Well, thanks. I have the pleasure today of attempting to give an honest look at credentials and the kind of things that you might want to take into account if you're considering getting a credential that you don't already have. My focus is a little more commercial building and infrastructure systems, and then we're going to hear about residential later in the session. So here's kind of what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to talk about what's out there, why you'd want one, what you'd use one for, a credential or a certification, and then give you some thoughts that we've discovered at Virginia Tech on how you might go about choosing and what would most benefit you. Hopefully you won't end up like that. Sometimes it feels like that when you're trying to decide how to proceed. So there's a whole world of credentials out there, and they're driven by a number of things. Many of the credential systems that are available in the green building field are associated with some sort of rating system. And so they're driven by those rating systems. I'll show you some examples of those and various levels of rigor associated with that. There's a whole set of credentials that are associated with establishing your credibility or screening, so that if you're looking for a green job, say, and you have a particular certification, people know they can rely on your skill set. And then there's a whole sort of approach that you can take that deals with personal aspirations, degree programs, things like that. So we'll look at some of these, starting with building-related rating systems. There's an awful lot of rating systems for commercial buildings around the world. If we focus on the Western Hemisphere here, most of you have heard of LEED, I hope. Anyone heard of green globes? No? Okay. It's emerging. It's out there as a potential alternative to LEED. Certainly hasn't taken the U.S. market by storm yet. But those are the two main ones in the U.S. that you can get credentials for and that you can establish your credibility with regard to administering the rating system. There are also some international systems, and technically LEED and Green Globes are also international. Living Building Challenge, however, is much broader in terms of how it is certifying buildings. And there is a brand new credential associated with Living Building Challenge. Have you guys heard of Living Building Challenge? Nobody? Okay. So it's a performance-based system that's attempting to create buildings that are truly sustainable, that can stand alone. They're net zero energy or net positive energy, net positive water, so on and so forth. And the credential associated with that is called Living Building Leader. Okay, so that's out there, brand new thing you might want to look into. We don't have too many of those on the East Coast yet, Living Building Challenge certified buildings, but my guess is we'll start to see a lot more soon. At the infrastructure scale, here are some of the rating systems that are available to evaluate infrastructure projects, like bridges and roads and airports and all sorts of those kinds of facilities. Sequel was the first one developed in the United Kingdom, and we're starting to see more in the US, some that are focused on roads, some focused on sites. The Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure has a brand new rating system called the Envision system. Anyone heard of that? No? Okay. They have a two-tiered credential system. One, if you're basically planning to practice and assist on projects, kind of like a LEED AP. And then one, if you're going to evaluate how well projects have done, you're going to evaluate other people's submittals, basically. So those two levels are available. Sequel's got them. The ISI has them for the Envision rating system. And again, it's still kind of emerging. One of the neat things about these systems is, in my opinion anyway, they take into account social sustainability a lot more so than we've been able to do with building systems. So they consider the economic and social context in which these public projects occur and look at how they're serving the community at large. Okay, so big variety of rating systems there. On the second tier here, if we start looking at skills-driven or credibility-driven rating system, I'm sorry, not rating systems, but credentials. These are some examples of ones that are out there. You may have been to the presentation yesterday that talked about credentials. One of the ones that was discussed there was the Green Advantage certification. That's been targeted at builders, at contractors. There's a residential and commercial level for that. And it's not necessarily associated with a rating system, although there is precedent, if you have a certain number of people who are certified under this rating system, that you could get a LEED innovation credit. But it's not directly tied to a rating system. IFMA has a new credential, Sustainable Facilities Professional. Okay, so that's out there. I don't know if any of y'all are involved with facilities management. Again, this is kind of based on a training and an exam. It's not associated with the rating system, but it's meant to establish that baseline level of credibility. And then another new one on the field, on the market, is the Sustainable Construction Supervisor, which is administered by the National Council for Construction Education and Research. This one's targeted at the trades and at site superintendents. It's pretty new. It hasn't really taken off yet. But again, it's based on training followed by an exam, not linked with any rating system. That exam, I was lucky enough to help write it. And I can tell you that it does address some issues of rating systems. But again, it's not tied directly to them. So all sorts of things emerging in areas of the market that have not historically been served by this. Then on the personal aspiration side, this is where you might pursue a credential. You know, it's not necessarily going to get you directly a job, but it's going to establish your knowledge and skill set in the field. And these kind of fall into the categories of maybe college degrees or minors or things like that. And, you know, they may help you get hired by a green company, but they're less recognizable than some of the credentials that we're used to seeing. So, for example, here's a new specialization in renewable energy and sustainability management that's offered by DeVry. Okay, so that's got a big student body, lots of applicability there. It's no longer just a few elite schools that offer sustainability. We're also seeing this emerge at various levels. Here's a new Master of Science in Green Building that's offered by the San Francisco Institute of Architecture. So all levels of education, these kinds of specialized credentials are available for people to look at. I don't know, what do you think? Tuition, $4,800, online only. Anyone going to sign up?
That's a little steep for online only.
Online, but a whole master's degree? I don't know. What do you think? Anybody going to run out and sign up? No? Okay, drop in the bucket. There are a growing number of these things. Okay, so let me just step aside for a moment and comment as somebody whose job it is to build training programs, to build educational degrees and curricula that are supposed to be pumping out people who are competent in our field. All right, so in academia, there's two main philosophies. There is the stealth approach, and this kind of is everybody who leaves our program should have a basic level of competence in sustainability and green building. It should not be a specialized add-on that you have as part of your degree. We want everybody to come out with that basic literacy. And that's kind of what you're seeing at the university level, is that broad incorporation as part of the curriculum. Then you've got the flagrant approaches, and those are kind of the specialty things. So there are degrees now in just sustainability, in just green building. When you emerge, you're a specialist in those areas. I don't know, which way do you guys think is better? Probably some combination of both, okay? I assume you all have had some sort of post-secondary education. How many of you had a sustainability element as part of that? Okay, a couple of folks in the front. We're starting to change general degrees to roll this in and make it a part so that everybody's exposed to the concept. All right, so what might you use a credential for? Well, here are some of the different tasks and parts of the design process that you might be able to draw upon this to use. Okay, so we all know about guiding planning and design and improving that. If you have that basic sustainability knowledge, you can contribute to the design and project planning processes. You may want to use a credential to help you evaluate courses of action. And this, for example, is something you can do with a LEED credential, if you're familiar with the LEED rating system. That gives you a ruler to evaluate option A versus option B, start to think about how it could contribute to sustainability. Some of the credibility types of credentials, the IFMA credential, Sustainable Facilities Professional, focuses on helping you develop generalized skills that you can use to manage this process overall. And then lastly, you might want to do documentation, auditing, and so those are typically associated with rating systems. These are all the reasons you might want to go and get a credential. So let me talk just a little bit about rating systems and where I think the field is headed as a whole. Because I think because a number of our credentials are driven by rating systems, our overall philosophy of how we pursue green projects is going to change. It's going to evolve. Okay? Thanks. So this is where we started. We used to have rating systems that were very prescriptive. Maybe y'all remember LEED version 1. Anyone use that in a pilot? Yeah?
I was certified under the LEED version.
Excellent, yeah. Do you remember some of the prescriptive statements in there?
Oh, yeah.
This was one of them. Okay, and then people quickly found, wow, maybe pervious pavement isn't the best choice for everything. Right, so we needed to take a step back and think about what makes a technology or a practice appropriate for a project. All right, so, but measurement is really simple with this. You have a checklist, and it becomes a matter of, did you use one or didn't you? So anybody, well not anybody, but it's fairly easy to go out and look and say this project meets this requirement or not. Whether it actually works, we don't know. All right, so we're headed toward, this is kind of maybe where we are now, a more performance-based evaluation approach. Okay, so here we talk about the level of performance we want to achieve. How specifically to do that is up to a design team. So you need a little bit more broad knowledge to be able to see how your decisions affect everything else. You know you want to win the race. Doesn't matter if you run it fast, run it slow. You still have to get to the end. This is where I really think we're going, is a more whole solution performance-based measurement approach. Okay, so instead of on the previous slide we were talking about, still talking about pavements and how they should behave, here we're saying at the project scale, we don't care how you do it, but make sure no stormwater leaves the site. And so that can involve any number of building systems. And you need a really interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approach to take advantage of this and capture the synergies from adjusting the design of all those related systems together. Okay, so what kind of credential do you think we need to measure this? Well, as somebody who's observing the evolution of the field in this regard, I see two parallel and somewhat competing trends. Right? On the one hand, as we move toward a more systems-based approach, there are greater opportunities for complex optimization, for every project to be unique and have a unique solution that optimizes its context and its needs. This requires systems thinkers, right? It requires brilliant solutions by brilliant minds applied uniquely to every project. It'd be great if we could do that all the time, not necessarily practical. At the same time, we're seeing diffusion of green practices across a larger range of practitioners, larger range of products, building types, which means there's a need for standardization and market consistency. And these kinds of evaluations need to be understandable to everybody. So these are two sort of conflicting things. So what does this mean if you are a company or an individual who is trying to evaluate a credential? Should you go pursue one yourself? Should you sponsor your employees to do it? Well, as an individual, market demand is something that's really worth paying attention to. Okay, so how many of you guys are LEED APs or Green Associates? One, okay. But nobody is a Green Globe professional. Nobody's even heard of Green Globes. So perhaps you've never even considered that as an option. That's because the market in the US is focused on LEED. All right, so in making that choice between the two, well, it's not as obvious why you would want to pursue a rating system-driven credential that's not well known in a country. Okay, but you should also, as an individual, consider developing a much deeper skill set that allows you to operate on these custom optimized projects that are out there and to take a given solution and make it work in a specific project environment. And so what if you're a company? What if you're somebody who provides architectural or engineering services or construction-related services? Well, Jake here, who presented yesterday, talked a little bit about the kinds of incentives that people are getting for getting their credentials in companies. And a lot of those are driven by rating systems. So if a company needs to be competent with regard to a rating system, they might be more inclined to hire you if you have a credential associated with that rating system. But it's really more about delivering sustainable value to your clients. If you get too tied to a rating system, you lose some of the flexibility that you would otherwise have to find better solutions for a project as a whole. So it's a trade-off between credentials as a commodity versus creativity and something that you could apply. And it's a difficult challenge. So there's no particular right answer to this, but there are a lot of things to think about. And I hope that if you're considering pursuing a credential, that you consider both the need for that broader knowledge to support creative decision making, as well as the market recognition and credibility that a specific kind of focused credential will offer you.
I want to focus really on the retrofit industry and what certifications exist in the retrofit industry. Does anybody in here have a BPI certification or some other retrofit industry certification besides like LEED, HERS, all of the many other ones that you described that mostly focus on like new construction and those sorts of things, but outside of new construction? One, two. Building analyst. Okay, so we're going to talk about that a little bit and the need for it. There are a lot of homes out there, about a third right now, estimated that are more than 45 years old. You know, so there's a gigantic need for understanding existing homes right now, especially since the new construction market has kind of taken a slight dive. You know, it's leveling off a little bit and it probably is going to climb again. But right now there's a lot of attention being drawn to the existing market, you know, retrofitting what is out there. And there's a big need, as you can see, because there's a lot of older homes out there. So this home here is 90 years old, you know, and it's never had a physical, you know, what we call an energy audit basically for a home, you know, a physical on the home, checking all the systems, making sure everything's working. How many people in here are 90 years old? Nobody. How many people in here have had a physical at least once? Of course. Yeah, so, you know, why shouldn't our homes also have physicals periodically to check out their systems, make sure everything's working properly, make sure it's in balance, right? So the home performance industry focuses on the house as a system. It's a systematic approach of looking at the house to make sure that everything is working efficiently, it's comfortable, it's safe most importantly, you know, and it's healthy. And also focusing on the durability of the structure, okay? So why do we care about home performance? Anybody?
Energy bills.
Energy bills, yeah?
Indoor air.
Indoor air quality, health, comfort, health, safety. Notice those are the three primary ones. You know, if we can make a house that's energy efficient, but we don't take into account comfort, safety, and health, what have we accomplished? You know, we've created basically what I like to call an energy efficient death trap. We've sealed people up in a really nice tight house and destroyed their indoor air quality, potentially caused their system to backdraft, their heating system, a water heater, or whatever. But we haven't done them any good, you know. Durability, want to keep that in mind, you know, of course. And then, you know, of course, other factors like climate change, energy independence also come into play with certain clients. So in the retrofit world, we currently have this model, BPI certification. Many of us have BPI certifications out there. There's the building analyst, which is the first certification that most folks achieve. It's the energy auditor. It's the first person in the door. It's the person who greets the client, who tests out the house. It's the one that does the physical on the house, basically. We have the certified envelope professional. This is somebody who's maybe like a crew chief or somebody who's actually in the field working on the house. They know just as much as the building analyst and a little bit more because they need to be able to test out as well as test in and kind of direct their work. You've got the heating professional. This is very specialized, but he also needs to know some of the same things as the building analyst. So there's a lot of crossover between these different certifications. You know, they go all the way up to manufactured housing and even multifamily and now building operations technician or something like that. So they got about 6 or 7 now. As you know, there's been a lot of money dumped on the retrofit industry in the last couple years. Okay, and DOE has also invested over $139 million in training and technical assistance in this industry. Why? You know, because we've got a lot of people out there working on homes that are not certified. You know, do you go to a doctor that's not certified? No, you look for that plaque when you're sitting there in the waiting room for like an hour and a half. Well, at least he's certified, you know. I'll wait a little bit longer. But you know, basically, you know, DOE has invested a lot of money to improve the retrofit certification industry. You know, creating standard work specifications so that somebody who works on a home in North Carolina is working on a home in Oklahoma to the same standards. They're to the same quality, so that's transferable. That's the key. Training program accreditation. We're going to talk a little bit about that, which involves, you know, creating job task analyses. David, feel free to jump in here if I'm off track. So JTAs, job task analyses. These are critical skills that need to be taught to all of the workers out there, so that if I'm teaching somebody here in Virginia and somebody is being taught out in Oklahoma, they're being taught to the same standard, so that that skill is transferable. And that's the key. It's transferable. So out of that has come 4 new certifications, you know, through DOE and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, excuse me, and in conjunction with BPI, because BPI is now going to be the certifying agent for these 4 new certifications that have come out of DOE and NREL. And those certifications are Energy Auditor, Retrofit Installer Technician, Crew Leader, and Quality Control Inspector. Very similar to what already exists in the BPI world. Why do we need 4 new certifications if we already have 5 or 6 others? Any suggestions? Well, there's money, of course. That's a driving factor. But from what I see, having been in this industry for 6 years, I'm a building analyst. And what's your name?
Kenneth Sands.
Say that again.
Kenneth. Sorry.
Kenneth. I'm sorry. Kenneth goes and takes a class. Takes about a week, right, to go through the building analyst course. On Friday, he takes his test. He's certified. He's on the same level as I am, right? We're both building analysts. To the homeowner, to somebody who's hiring a building analyst, who's employing, you know, whatever, program implementers, we're on the same level. So these 4 new certifications, you know, they're actually a little bit higher. They're on another level. Because what makes them on another level is this right here, prerequisites. In order to take these other 4 certifications, you need to have industry-specific experience that ties to those certifications. So you can go and get building analyst certified. You can go get EP certified, heating certified, whatever. But then you need to go out, take that's your basic, your foundational knowledge. Yes, you've gone through some technical training. You've passed a very rigorous test. It's not easy. But now go out there and work for a while, work in the industry for a year or so, and then come back and take this other test, you know, to become, can I go backward?
Yeah.
You know, and now get certified to be an energy auditor. That's transferable across the United States. I mean, all of these certifications are transferable because BPI is recognized nationwide. But these other certifications here on the top row, they're a little bit step above. You know, and so now when I'm looking at somebody who has an energy auditor certification, I know that they also have work experience behind them. They've been in the field for a year, 6 months, whatever it is. It's like some of them require like 2,000 hours of work experience, doing audits, doing assessments, creating reports, etc. So there's a lot more value in these 4 new certifications. And so DOE has seen the need for that because over the last 3 or 4 years, 4 years now that I've been BPI certified, you know, especially since I've moved to Insert and working with a lot of weatherization folks who are out there doing this work on a daily basis, and they say, yeah, it's just a certification. And it is just a certification unless you have some work experience, some real life experience to back it up. And so BPI in general has gotten kind of a negative connotation associated with that. Well, you're BPI certified, you don't know anything. Well, that's what you say because you just hear that first part, but I do have some work experience behind it before I even got certified, which I don't know if that's good or bad. But the bottom line is that we want real life experience tied to your certification. Just like your students, Annie, are talking about, well, I'm going to leave here with a degree, but if I don't have anything to back it up, the employer's going to go, well, that's just a degree. Good job. You went to school, you spent $100,000 on that certification. You know, but what do you got behind it? You know, and so that's where this next level comes in. Okay, so benefits to the employee. It's a little bit of differentiation between the average BA and you now. This energy auditor certification. It improves the workplace, higher quality, higher level of professionalism. you know. Mobility of certification, the key there. It's transferable. Benefits to the employee. You know, we've talked about that. We can differentiate between the average BA and now energy auditor. And it also gives everybody who's been currently working within the ARA program and the weatherization network, the WAP network, a chance to certify and test out and now take that with them. You know, when the ARA funds go away, they can take that with them to private industry and say, hey, I've been working in this industry. You know, I've got work experience behind this certification. There's a lot more value to that than just the average guy that goes to a week-long course, gets BA certified, and, you know, so I'm on a different level. So the benefits to program administrators, once again, you know, higher level of accountability. Benefits to the industry. It's the first time that we actually have a quality control inspector certification, you know, within those four. Somebody who is going to be a third-party verifier to verify that David here has been doing his job right, you know. Checks and balances. It's the first time we actually have a true crew leader certification, you know. So how does it all fit together? So we have standard work specifications. So everybody is held to the same standards. We don't have Virginia standards, Oklahoma standards, California standards. I mean, they're going to have some minor standards that are different, but overall, sealing a hole is going to be sealing a hole. Installing insulation is going to be installing insulation. I mean, we're going to have some set standards in which we have to meet certain criteria, you know, in order for it to be considered air sealing or insulating or whatever. The JTAs, you know, have come out of that. So that means that everybody needs to be trained to a certain standard. They need to know a certain amount of ABC in order to sit for the test. And so training providers like ourselves, we need to make sure that we're teaching to the JTAs so that we're matching up with the standard work specifications. And so that when I teach somebody here in Virginia, and I've got a training center out in Oklahoma teaching somebody to this, we're on the same level, you know, and so that makes it more transferable. And then also accreditation and certification. So our facility, I don't know if any of you have been there, some of you have, 12,500 square foot facility in Christiansburg, Virginia. This is our training center that will be, the first accredited, IREC accredited weatherization training center in the United States starting in June. So we have gone through a very rigorous process, and the field assessor recently left our site Wednesday morning and has basically made recommendations for us to move forward to accreditation. So that sets the bar high. DOE has set 4 new certifications that BPI that now has gone through an ANSI accreditation process, and they are forcing testing centers to become accredited in some ways as well, as it's a more rigorous process. So the testing protocol is stricter. It's raising the bar industry-wide so that BAs, energy auditors, whatever level you're on, it's more recognized and it has some value. That's the whole idea. It's just creating value within the industry. And so, you know, that's what we're about. We've gone through the process first because we value that quality. And we want to make sure that we are teaching to the highest quality possible, and going through this it's really been awesome. So I'm rambling here. So what questions do you guys have?
About 7 more minutes
Yeah.
for questions.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Does Insert do training and testing, or just training?
We do training and testing. And actually, in the BPI model, the trainers can no longer be the testees, or the testers. I'm sorry, the testers. So that also adds a little bit of quality assurance in the process. It used to be that I could train David and then I could test him out. Well, of course, if I want to make my numbers look good, I've got a 90% or 100% pass rate. Yeah, good job, you know. I might skew the results a little bit or something, or not score appropriately. There has been some of that has happened, which is discouraging, especially to people like us who strive for high quality, and we want some value behind that certification. And want you to have that value behind your certification. And so BPI has saw that, and so has DOE, and so they're raising the bar They're encouraging training centers to become accredited. They've created 4 new certifications, with JTAs and standard work specifications behind them, so that there's a lot of value, a lot of weight behind it. So. And there was a question earlier that I wanted to speak to. If we've got a few minutes, do we have a minute? Okay, about homeowners that they want to build their house to the same standards as, say, LEED or HERS or whatever, and they go through this checklist and they're like, oh, I've done everything I'm supposed to do, so we're good. But there is a lot of validity in going through the whole process, because the test out is very important. And I've gone back to houses where the homeowner went through and I did all the checklist. I said, but did you have somebody certify it? Well, no. That's why you're having your comfort issue that you have. That's why that we're all back out here and you're spending additional several $1,000s trying to find the problem, et cetera. And, because if you don't have somebody verify as you go through the process, it's really hard to do it on the back side. Sometimes you can't, especially with HERS. Once you've put the drywall up and you've done some things, you can't go back and check off some of those boxes. You have to assume that it's the worst possible, and you lose points. The other thing to think about and maybe encourage your homeowners to do, or why, is that the industry as a whole is starting to recognize it. It's slow, but I'd say in my prediction, maybe 5 or 10 years or whatever, sometime in the near future, MLS will be recognizing these houses, and they're pushing toward that. They already recognize the HERS rating on MLS. There are other programs out there like EPS that is taking hold in several states, Energy Performance Score, that actually can create a label now for existing homes. It's, hasn't taken off completely yet, but I think that the appraisal industry and the realtor industry is starting to recognize that not every house is the same. Just like not every car is the same. Not every car gets the same miles per gallon. Not every house uses the same amount of energy. And so there's a big push from DOE to try to get these labels out there, so that if your homeowner goes and spends an additional $5,000 to get their house certified, that they get that back out on the back side when they sell the house. There's some value in that. It's coming. It's slower than I would like. It should have been here about 10 years ago. But I think it is taking hold. So it may not seem like there's a benefit now, but if they don't do it now and 5 years from now there is, they can't go back, So.
Yeah, a gentleman downstairs mentioned that earlier. He said they were trying to incorporate the net present value into